What it is, y'all, it's your old boy Pilk, and I'm coming back to you today with another Danchro video. Now, a lot of talk has been kind of circling around this game now that Danmemo, or at least US servers Danmemo, have kind of expired. And this is something I've thought about for a really long time. People like to compare this game to the other game, and in some ways I don't feel like it's a terribly fair assessment. Number one, the other game is just unbelievable. Like, one of, if not the most free-to-play friendly games ever. Like, it is such a standard to hold a game to. I just don't think it's fair for any game. Now, you guys know, if you guys have been around this channel long enough, I've played a lot of gachas, and I love Danmemo. The one reason that I love Danmemo is how free-to-play friendly it was. Now, I have thoroughly been enjoying this game, and it's given me something to think about. So let's go ahead and go into our gacha here for a second, because that's kind of like the one big argument everyone always has with this game. And I kind of agree to it to an extent. So when you come to these banners, you can get a guaranteed simply by going over here to the exchange and you're doing 20 summons or 15 if you want the assist. And it's not impossible, obviously, to get the unit guaranteed, but it's really a lot to ask. Now, in Danmemo, obviously, you had the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th draws were always guaranteed to be a new unit. So, whereas here, 20 draws before you get 1, versus there, in the first 10, you're guaranteed 4. Seems like, on the surface, a much better value. However, consider that in Danmemo, and I'm going to be totally fair here. You guys know I loved that game. I would never diss that game unless it was completely fair. Here's the reality, though. In Danmemo, you needed 6 of one unit just to be functional. In order to use any unit in any kind of PvP or any realistic setting, you had to have all 6. And that's kind of the loophole that really got people to wail in that game. Is we gave you 4, you just need 2 more. And oftentimes you could just go get a paid banner or do a couple extra draws or whatever. Maybe you got lucky. A lot of us were able to, if not obtain it immediately on the first banner, if it was a non-time limited, maybe get one later on or whatever it is. But really, you always had to get to level 80 for a unit to be functional whatsoever. However, and I'll go ahead and I'll kind of jump over to my bin here. I have so few units with bonds. In fact, Bell and Leafy, I have 1 bond, and I've really chased those units hard. But I'll be honest, they don't necessarily need the bond. If we go here and we go down to Awaken, you'll see that adding a second bond only goes from HP 7348 to 7624. There's not a huge jump in power, in HP, in much of anything for an Awakening. Now, you can get all 6 units and you can fully awaken this unit, and he'll give you some pretty good stats. But the stats you get are nowhere near on the same level. So really, the really nice part about this game, and the one thing I think people are missing, is that 1 unit is more than enough. Now, I'm looking over here, this time limited Haruhime that I never pulled. Though, right now, we've got tickets. We're getting free-to-play tickets for Haruhime. We're getting free-to-play tickets for all these other units. So let's go ahead and... You do not... Oh. I already spent my ticket, apparently. Thought I still had a ticket up for grabs, but apparently not. So, obviously, like I said, we get free-to-play tickets, we get all that good stuff. I could go into this banner, 5 more draws, and essentially what I can do is I can go grab this ticket. Now, while this ticket isn't guaranteed to be a new unit, this ticket is guaranteed to be a UR in general. And after 8 draws, that's actually really respectable. So I'm going to argue that while I would not put this game on the same pedestal as Danmemo, But I wouldn't put any game I've ever played on the same pedestal as Danmemo. It's just not a thing. I will, however, say I think some of the criticisms of this game might be a little harsh. Now, one thing I do want to do is I want to go back in for the spell. The spell is really, really, really solid. And notice here, I actually have some free draws for this unit anyway. Notice here that even the 10 draws that we're getting here, those will count towards my 80. So I'll literally be halfway to my 8 multis once we're done with this draw. So, which is really nice. Like, even the free-to-play draws count towards that. So, there's a lot of other gachas that don't do that. In fact, many gachas don't do that. Well, it doesn't look like we're getting a UR here. That is what it is. I'm going to go ahead and do a draw and see where we get. Now, right now, we're in a state where they're dropping a lot of currency on us left, right, and center. So, I do think I'm going to go in for Bell. I think you kind of need Bell for some of the events that are currently running. And that just kind of is what it is. I'm really hoping I pull a UR here, because the whole point in this video was to show you how fair I think overall this game actually is in comparison to how people are kind of perceiving it. And I will say there's a lot of other gachas out there that aren't nearly on this level. All right, we'll do one more and see where we get. I don't want to go too crazy because this event's getting ready to end, and we are basically going into the half anniversary after this. The half anniversary is like kind of here now. It's like kicking off, but I kind of feel like we're getting some really crazy next. Oof, they are not dropping the URs tonight. Normally, now I've had some really good luck in this game. This is kind of an example of the realistic aspect of this game. There are no guaranteed URs unless you go deeper. And I could go 2 more summons. So notice here, I've got 60 summons. When I get to 80, which is 8 multis, I can actually then go buy that ticket. So it would pay at some point to go in and do the summons. It's really tempting. Especially considering right now we have these missions. Now, I haven't quite beat the last few missions on this. I have to go clear Hero's Aspiration, but I'll cover that in its own video because I think this is one that a lot of people might be stuck on, and I've got a pretty good idea of what we need to do to make that a lot easier to fix if you haven't already. So we'll kind of cover that in its own right. But I wish we had gotten lucky on the banners. But, I mean, you know, in a way, it actually is, I won't say counterintuitive to my point. It probably is a little bit. But I do honestly still feel like this game is, I'm not going to use the term fair. What I will say is I feel like this game, I think it's underrated for what it is. Now, will I go crazy? Will I wail in this game like I did in the last game? Probably not. I don't think I get enough out of my input. I will buy a little bit of paid currency here and there. I do on the regular, and that gets me a little bit further. But the one downside to this game is buying units is a little more expensive than it was in Danmemo. But we're also, you know, like, things are a lot more expensive right now in general than they were a year ago. Now, you can mitigate some of that. We did that a couple weeks ago on stream where buying the Japanese currency is significantly less than buying the U.S. currency, and you can transfer your account between the U.S. and the Japanese servers. So, if you want to get really brave, you can actually install the Japanese version of the game. We talked about that with Danmemo. You can go get Coup app, download the Japanese version, and you can make purchases through the Japanese version, do your summons, and then pick your game back up in the U.S. version. Now, I don't believe any of the Sealess, Iris, whatever you want to call it, will actually transfer over, or the paid stuff won't. But do your summons in the Japanese version of the game and then transfer back here with your free-to-play. There's no shame in that whatsoever, and you can mitigate some of the costs there. It's not going to be as efficient, but once again, when it comes to, especially like if my Team for Magic Stone Scramble, Let's go ahead and grab that. I have been absolutely wrecking folks out with this team, and my Otaro does not have a bond. In fact, I don't even think my Artemis has a bond. So, 1 unit is shockingly enough, and I find that very interesting. But let me know honestly if you feel like this assessment is too lenient, or if you feel like people have been too critical. I honestly think the rates do suck, and that is a fact. But the fact that 1 unit you can one and done every banner, I think that there's something to be said about that. And I don't think this game will ever get to a point where fully maxed out broken units will be necessary. Probably in the upper echelon of PvP they will help. But now, especially with the ability system, I think there's ways you can mitigate even that. But let me know your thoughts down below, as always. Like, comment, share, and I'll be back with more Danmachi Battle Chronicle coming up real soon.